Hi, I'm Ashley, and a year ago I got a breast reduction. Here's my road to reduction. Hi, and thanks for joining me on episode 5 of the Road to Reduction podcast. In the last few episodes, we covered my finding a therapist, getting diagnosed with medical PTSD, and my feelings around surgery. Today, we're jumping back into the timeline right after insurance approved me, and I want to start talking about sharing my journey with the people in my life. So, once I got the letter that my insurance approved me, I was able to start working on scheduling my appointment. And I'm a teacher, so scheduling was a little bit tricky. The doctor had said that I only needed 2 weeks off after surgery to recover, but I felt like that wasn't enough time, just knowing that I tend to be a slow healer, so I wanted to schedule my appointment around a school vacation. So if I got it done 2 weeks before vacation, the vacation week would be like a third week off before I went back for school. And that just made scheduling a little tricky because they weren't scheduling that far out. And so it resulted in a lot of phone tag with me in the doctor's office where I'd call and leave a message and ask if they're scheduling for February, and then they'd call me back a couple days later and be like, not yet, try a week later. And so it was just staying up on that, which, you know, as medical PTSD is a part of this, was not very helpful for my anxiety levels. But we got it scheduled, and it was fine. And I have to say that one of the first people who really knew about this was my principal, because of course I needed to do the time off and everything like that. So he was fantastic when I went into him. I went into him in August before school even started. So I went into him before I got the acceptance letter, I think, the approval letter. And I said, you know, I'm going for a breast reduction. I'm waiting to hear on insurance. I'm waiting to get things scheduled. But I just want you to know this is coming up sometime this year, if possible. If you think I should wait till summer, I can try to do that, but I'd really like to get it done sooner. And he was so supportive. He told me to take as much time as I need. He told me to plan it for whenever they were available, that school will work around me, I come first. And that support was phenomenal because I was really worried about taking time off from my job, because anybody worries about taking time off for your job for a surgery. So he was a great help for the whole process, and I'm so thankful for that. But now that surgery was a reality, I needed to start telling people. And before school started, I had only told my best friends and my parents and sister. I hadn't shared with my family, I hadn't shared it with any extended friends, any acquaintance, any coworkers, anything like that. I just hadn't shared because it was anxiety producing to share, truthfully. I mean, it was something very unsettling to share. It was something that, you know, I was still having doubts about it. Even though I knew I was going to do the surgery and not back out, I was still having all of these doubts and concerns, and it was stressful to talk and think about. So a lot of times I just didn't want to share. And I didn't want to share because it also felt extremely personal, because we don't talk about breast reduction as a medical surgery. It's more talked about as a cosmetic thing. And it wasn't a cosmetic thing for me, so I felt awkward sharing it with people because I didn't want them to have the point of view that I was just doing this for how I look. So eventually I did have to start telling people. So after telling my closest friends, I kind of, you know, like, you have friend groups kind of in circles, like on a dartboard or target. And, you know, your closest people are in the middle circle, and then you go out, and they're still pretty close to you, but they're not the first people you run to, and you go out and you go, and the further they get away, the less close you are as a friend and the less details you share. And so I started telling people kind of like in my second ring. Like, they're not my best friends, but they're still pretty close to me. And I have to say, I mean, the best friends in my family were super supportive as soon as I made this decision. The next ring was fantastic as well. They asked really good questions. They asked if they could help. In fact, that was usually the first thing after I said, I'm getting a reduction. They're like, this is going to be great for you. What can I do to help you? So sharing with these people made it easier to start sharing with other people. And so once I went out, like, another ring to, like, we're kind of friends, but mostly because we work together or because we have friends in common circle, that's where life got difficult. That's where sharing was uncomfortable, to say the least. I think a lot of these people just didn't know how to respond because they didn't know the day-to-day parts of my life. they're not the people I shared that I go to PT weekly, and I go to the chiropractor every 2 weeks, and I have intense back pain every day, and I can't hike and run and jump and do all, like, they didn't have a lot of my medical history and a lot of my history at all. So I think they didn't have the full picture. So when we'd be talking, and a lot of times it wasn't, like, my closest circle and the next circle out, I set them down to deliberately tell them this. Like, I have something I need to tell you. It's very important. Here it is. I'm getting a breast reduction. But that next circle out, I didn't really do that. It was more coming up in conversation. Like, they'd mention something about February, or they'd mention something about in the months coming up, and I'd be like, oh yeah, if my breast reduction doesn't, or I think I probably didn't even say my breast reduction, if my reduction doesn't interfere with that, I'd totally love to, blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, reduction? I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm getting a breast reduction in February. And so I think it took them off guard, and they would blurt out the first thing that came to their mind, and a lot of the times it was, oh, but you look so good. Once again, reaffirming that we think about reduction as a, how do I look? And side note, I might have looked good by American standards, which is like the big-breasted woman, but by proportional standards, not at all. I was way out of proportions. Like, all boob and nothing else. So, I appreciate their compliments. I think it was meant to be a compliment. I'm gonna assume the best here. I appreciate their compliments and they're trying to be nice, but these sentences actually hurt. So when they would blurt this stuff out, at first I didn't know what to say back to that. And so I was just like, oh, thanks, well, it's scheduled. But it hurt. It made me second guess my decision. It made me angry. It made my anxiety spike about everything, because here's this surgery that I medically need to get because my spine is curving the wrong way, and people are saying, like, oh, you're fine without it. And so it was kind of a mindfuck at times at the very beginning. And I started talking to my therapist about these responses. And she said, you know, she pointed out some really good stuff about how surgery is typically when someone is really sick. Like, surgery is when your appendix is about to burst, or there's cancer, or there's something wrong with your organs. So when you look at me, who appears typically healthy, you know, they didn't know all of the extra doctor's appointments and all of the pain and stuff I went through at home. I appear healthy, so I should be fine. And she made a really good point, and I think that helped me a lot with the anger part of it, because I was very angry at those comments. And I think those are just people who don't know what to say. And I will respect and honor that, because I've been in scenarios where I just don't know what to say. But the better thing that you can do, if you're listening to this and someone is like, I'm getting a breast reduction, the best thing you can do is ask, what can I do to help, if you actually want to help. If you don't want to help, please don't ask that one. And then, can I ask you why, or, you know, what made you decide to do this? Or if you're not curious, I'm glad you're looking out for your health. You know, that will be great for you. Just something very non-committal if you don't know what to say, but definitely not a judgment. And again, I do think these were accidental judgments. I don't think they meant them in the way that they came out, or the way that I took them, but they were hurtful. It was very hurtful. So there's a lot of mixed reactions to people hearing that you're getting a reduction. And, you know, I had some people who were phenomenal. Like, I have a best friend from high school. I'm hoping to get him on the podcast at some point. He was one of those people where, you know, he doesn't live in the state anymore, but he came home and we met up for lunch. And I was like, I have some big news to tell you. And he was like, okay, what is it? And I said, I'm getting a breast reduction. And he just laughed and went, yeah, I knew you would need to. That was my favorite. That was the best reaction I could have had. He's like, I've known you needed one since high school. I mean, maybe not in high school, but you would have needed one. He was just so good. And there were a few other people who had really good reactions like that, and those were the people who I stuck with coming up to surgery. Those were the people who, once I got over the intense anxiety about the surgery, I could reach out to and have conversations about. which was needed. They were the people who got me out of the I feel so isolated phase, and I don't even know if they know it. They were the people who really, really saved my mental health in the months and weeks leading up to surgery, and I'm just so grateful that they are a part of my life. On the other hand, there were people who did not continue to be a part of my life after their comments. And there are people who, if I don't have to interact with them again, I will be content because of the way they handled my news about a breast reduction. It was entirely upsetting, it was entirely uncalled for, and it was a lot of jealousy. I can think of one where a close friend's mom said some comments that thankfully I did not hear at a dinner we were out to, and one of my friends filled me in later with just like a heads up, hey, you should know this, and if I don't have to talk to her again, I'll be good. Because once I knew what she said, I was thankful I didn't hear it at dinner, because I probably would have jumped over the table at her and just let her have it. And it's really funny because starting to tell people, I expected the men in my life to be the people who struggled with this news. Because American society is about bigger breasted women and like, that's your desired figure and all that ridiculousness. And I expected the men to be like, why are you going smaller? When really, the men were super understanding. At least the men I've surrounded myself with were super understanding. I'm sure not every man is. But the men in my life were like, you doing this because you need to? And I was like, yep. And they're like, okay, that's cool. What, can I support you? Like, what does that even entail? The men in my life were phenomenal. I found that the people who really struggled with my news, funnily enough, were small-breasted women. And not all of them, because I have a lot of friends who were on the smaller side, and a lot of them were fantastic. They're like, oh my god, you're gonna love it! You can get cute bras at Walmart for like $10 now! I had a lot of women in my life who were just phenomenal. But there were a few, and they tended to be on the smaller size, and I honestly think it was jealousy for a few of them. Especially that mom I referenced earlier. I think hers was jealousy. And I think it's just because they don't understand the pain that large breasts cause, how it impacts your daily life, how it can hurt your body so much, because they don't have to deal with that. And it's never been part of their reality, when it's been part of my reality since high school. So, I was surprised about where the negativity came from. I was surprised about where positivity came from. And I was surprised by the giant amount of people who just didn't know what to say. Looking back on it now, I'm surprised by it. In the moment, I was angered and frustrated by it. But, you know, time passes, feelings change. You're able to get some better insight. So, it was just very interesting. So, my suggestion to you, if someone in your life is getting a reduction, whether you truly support it or not, you keep your judgments to yourself. Whatever you think about their decision to get this surgery is 100% your thoughts, and they don't need it unless they ask for it. If they ask for it, you are welcome to tell them, but in the meantime, like I said, supportive all the way. Just offering to help, offering to talk about it, offering to be interested in it. I had a lot of people, especially leading up to surgery, who asked me some very good questions. I had a coworker who was almost old enough to be my grandma, and she had some fantastic questions that we had over lunch at the weeks leading up to it, and she asked some great questions, and that was actually really good because it helped me process some things as I was explaining them to her. It was just really good, the amount of people who were curious, and I appreciated that. I really didn't find it awkward. I mean, this is a surgery where complete strangers are going to be messing with my body, so talking about it with friends was pretty much nothing once I got over the anxiety hump of the medical PTSD. But, it just, you know, I encourage you to be curious, because everyone's experience is different. As I've run into a few other women who have gotten breast reductions, talking about their experiences have been extremely interesting to me, because One, because a lot of them didn't have the medical PTSD going on that I do, so they were able to approach the whole situation very differently than I did, and that's cool. But also to hear about how everybody's body is different, and the healing and the joys of after surgery were different for everyone. Like, I am so excited to run, but there are some women who are like, I still don't run, but I love that I can whatever they love. So it's really interesting to just talk about surgery to someone who is getting it, and it's very therapeutic as someone who was approaching this surgery to be able to share about it. So if you have someone in your life who is considering a breast reduction, maybe not even ready for one, just considering one, talk about it with them. Just have a conversation. Why are they thinking about this? What are they hoping for an outcome? Have they done any research? Just start asking questions, because that's going to help the person process. And also because that's what a good friend does. And just listen. I had a friend my bestie, who is phenomenal. And I'm a slow processor in my emotions and thoughts, and I reprocess a lot. So I'd go to my therapy appointments, cry it out with my therapist, have a really good conversation, come home, eat dinner, shower, and then start to reprocess. So I'd call her, and for half an hour, she'd just let me ramble about everything that came up in therapy that day. And I did that probably not every therapy session, but pretty often, and she was a godsend for just listening. And then when I was ready to get feedback, she had great feedback or considerations or ideas. So it was just really good to tell the people close to you, but it's really hard to tell the people close to you. So if someone comes to you sharing this, just make sure you're listening, because that's what they're looking for. They're just looking for someone to listen as they continue this journey. Thank you for listening to me today. If you'd like to reach out and make contact, if you have questions, comments, concerns, feedback, anything at all, you can email me at roadtoreductionpodcast@gmail.com. I'm on Twitter at roadtoreduction. I'm on Podbean, Soundcloud, and YouTube as Road to Reduction. Please don't be shy about reaching out if you have questions, comments, you're going through this journey and you need some support. Whatever it is, I would love to hear from you. So once again, I'm Ashley. 1 year ago, I got a breast reduction, and thank you for joining me on my road to reduction. Music is Like Music CDK Mix by CDK, copyright 2013. It's licensed under the Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike license.